Welcome back to Inside the Helmet. My name's Michael, and I'm joined by my dad, as always. Uh,
Good
thank you
evening.
for thank you for tuning in with us tonight. What have we got?
Well, as always, we like to start off the podcast of Inside the Helmet with maybe a little insight that fans are unaware of that players and coaches all know because we've been
Yep.
on the field. And tonight I want to talk about tells.
Okay. Would you like to elaborate for the audience who maybe don't know what we're talking about? What you mean by a tell?
Sure, I'll tell you what a tell is. Um, so there's a lot of film study that's done during the week preparing for an opponent,
Hmm.
and you're always looking for a tell. And I think that the term comes from the world of poker playing, where people
Yeah.
can tell what a good hand or a bad hand a guy may be holding, depending upon different facial expressions or maybe even things that he's unaware of. So football is no different than that. A
Okay.
couple of examples of stories that I've heard, and I wish I could attribute where I heard them from, but they're just from long back in my memory. I remember hearing one time a famous defender being interviewed. He was retired, and they said, we noticed that whenever your defense happened to play this particular team that had a really good running back, and I don't again remember who that was either, this running back didn't make a lot of yards against your defense. You guys figured out something nobody else did. And because he was retired, of course, he could reveal the secrets. He said, "We noticed
Mm.
on film that this running back, if he was going to get the ball, he would put his mouthpiece in. But
Hmm.
if he wasn't going to get the ball, if he was just going to be a decoy or something, he wouldn't put in his mouthpiece. And so we knew if he put in his mouthpiece, he was probably unaware he was doing it, and his coaches were unaware." Um, Another tell I remember hearing about, there's actually two more. One was a quarterback who it was usually in shotgun. And if he was going to throw the ball just before the snap, he would lick his fingertips to
Hmm.
moisten them slightly. And if it was going to be a handoff, he wouldn't do it,
Huh.
and he probably was not aware. The very first time I ever heard about it was from a defensive tackle that got interviewed who said he could look at the knuckles of the lineman lined up across from him, and if the knuckles were white, that meant that the lineman was leaning forward on his fingers and therefore was going to be shooting out forward in a run block. But if
Sure.
the fingers were barely touching and the knuckles weren't white, he was probably going to drop back into pass blocking.
Wow.
So, film study, if you can get that kind of an advantage as a defense in particular, and know what's coming and rule out, if you know if it's a run or a pass, you can adjust your defense, and that's why you'll hear many times right before the snap, defenders are calling out stuff, yelling to each other, tipping each other off about what they think is coming. So I'm sure you've played quite a bit. Any tells that you remember coming across like that?
Yeah, well, as a quarterback, of course, we're not looking at the opposing offense's tells. We're more focused on the defense we'll be going against. And particularly the tells that I always look for, and the ones that maybe this is different for everybody, but for me at least, the ones that are easiest to spot are the corners. What they do when they, say, play 5 yards off the ball, or when their hips are turned towards the ball, and towards the quarterback rather than head up facing the receiver, or when they're very clearly pressing, when they're right nose to nose with the receiver. Just looking at those mannerisms and those patterns, seeing what they're doing in their alignment before the snap, that's essentially giving away for free what they're about to do. And then that gives us the advantage of how we're going to attack it.
Yeah, I think it's important not only to, in film study, study your opponent and looking for those things, but also to self scout
Hmm.
and be aware if your team, anybody on your team is tipping something off.
Sure.
And it could be something really subtle, like are they on the balls of their feet? Are they putting their feet in different positions? I kind of want to say I remember hearing a story about a quarterback who did his feet differently if he knew he was going to have to drop back.
I
Um,
actually in eighth grade. Do you remember eighth grade in extreme flag football? The other quarterback on the team, his dad was a quarterback and
sure.
gave me some pointers, and he was the one that actually got me to start staggering my feet in my quarterback stance rather than having them like equal, I guess. And when I first started doing that, especially if I was under center, I would have a different foot back based on like if it was a handoff, say it was a sweep
Hmm.
to the left, I would have my left foot back, or if it was a sweep to the right, I would have my right foot back. I noticed that I forget if I noticed it about myself or if you or somebody else brought it to my attention, but that's one tell of mine that I used to have. I don't have it anymore. Now I just go left foot back all the time. But that's the one that comes to my mind immediately.
Yeah, I mean, in my playing days, way back when, as a wide receiver, the coach was always on us to make sure that we did our feet the exact same way at
Hmm.
the line of scrimmage. Be very aware and conscious because you didn't want to give anything away. Even if it even if it gave you a slight advantage if you had one foot back versus the other, depending upon the number of steps you were going to take before you cut left or right. He encouraged us very strongly to always do things the same way and make it look the same so that you're not tipping off
Sure.
maybe what's coming. So,
Hmm.
um, anyway, interesting topic because if you're a fan sitting in the stands, there's no way that you could know. You weren't in the film study, and you don't know what they're seeing down there on the field like that. So,
Of course.
um, yeah, so interesting topic. The big topic this week, of course, in our household, is uh, probably futile argument by the Longhorn head coach about the college football playoffs. It's pretty well been accepted that if you lose that third game in college, you probably are not going to get invited to participate in the 12 team college football playoff. We
Yeah.
understand that, and our beloved Longhorns have three losses. But the head coach has been on TV and ESPN and everything, trying to make the case and convince somebody. I'm sure that you've heard what he has said, and but for maybe people who've missed it, kind of if you could kind of recap his position, his argument, and then we'll kind of talk about does that argument hold any water or not?
I actually didn't hear that. Where are you?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I had assumed you'd seen it because it's all over the TV down here. I
I
don't mind
watch TV.
outlining it. Yeah, I don't mind outlining it.
Yeah.
Um, so Steve Sarkisian's the Longhorns head coach, and he's saying yes, we lost three games this season. However, one of those was to Ohio State, and we only lost to them by one touchdown. We had the ball with a chance to tie or win. It just didn't happen. It was at their place. It was the opening game of the season, and nobody's played them, Ohio State, within 7 points all year long. And he said a
Okay.
lot of teams will play the proverbial cupcake opener first couple of games, and just if the Longhorns would have chosen to do that and played a cupcake, then they'd be sitting there as a two-loss team, and of
Hmm.
course they'd be invited. So he's arguing that they got penalized for trying to schedule a tough opponent, and even though they did schedule the tough opponent, they barely lost, and nobody else has played Ohio State close this year. So the Longhorns should be in there because they have the best chance of beating the number one team.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I've necessarily seen the clip of Coach Sarkisian saying that, but I've certainly seen online a lot of Longhorn fans sort of regurgitating essentially what he's saying, and I absolutely agree with that. I think that despite us being a three-loss team, I've seen it somewhere that we are maybe the only team with three top 10 victories
True.
in all of college football. We, of course, had an immense strength of schedule to have to go against, and we've sure lost three games, but we've also beaten, some very good playoff opponents.
Yeah,
So
I mean, you're looking at Oklahoma, who's going to be invited. Texas
I
A&M
cannot believe
certainly.
that.
Texas A&M certainly with just one loss to the Longhorns. Of course, they're going to get
Hmm.
in, and you're going, well, Texas beat both of them, and here Texas is on the outside looking in. Everybody who's arguing against the Longhorns and holding on to that, well, sorry, third loss, they point to the Florida game, which when that happened, Florida, of course, unranked opponent, and really Texas absolutely looked abysmal on that day.
Yeah.
Everybody has an off day, and they're saying, well, hey, if you don't lose to Florida, if your only losses are to Georgia and Ohio State, then you're a two-loss team and you get in.
Hmm.
and
For
and
sure.
it's seen people debating this week on TV. So what does that mean? Should you just schedule cupcakes and try to make sure that you don't get that third loss? Or I mean, to my way of thinking, if you're playing an easy schedule, like not to pick on A&M or anything, but when I looked at their schedule, they played one top 10 team at the time that they played them, and that was Notre Dame,
Mhm.
and they only beat them 41-40, and everybody else on their schedule has been unranked. So reward them for only having one loss, but they haven't played anybody.
I think what needs to happen, of course, it's really cheap for a Longhorn fan, a fan of a team that might just barely miss the cut. It's kind of cheesy for me to say, oh, we need to expand the playoffs.
Uh-huh.
Because then any fan, okay, if it's a 16 team playoff, then the 17th team, their fans are going to say, oh, expand it to 18. But I do think that having a 12 team playoff might still be a little too small. I think maybe a 16, 18, maybe even 24. How many teams make the D3 playoffs? Is it 32?
I'm not sure that I've ever looked that up.
I'm pretty sure it's in the realm of 30 or 32 teams that make the Division 3 football playoffs. And I've heard it said many times, and I agree with it, that that Division 3 have a very good playoff format. And so I do think that the big guys, Division One, FBS, adopting a similar system wouldn't be a bad thing, because then you get all the top teams, your Texas, your Ohio State, your Georgia, Alabama, all that. They're going to make it consistently, even on a down year, and then you'll have plenty of room for your Cinderella runs, and then mostly everybody's happy. So
Well, there's
I
an
think.
argument that I've heard about that.
Hmm.
Uh, yes, and the TV revenue, of course, they love making the TV revenue, so that's more games.
Hmm.
However, in Division One, you've got a lot of guys who are planning to play beyond college football and all of the
Sure.
millions of dollars that they could make. And each game that you add, especially against, quality opponents with hard hitting, gives more opportunity for injury or even career altering injury.
Then just nuke the sport. If we're having people that are afraid to play football because they might get injured, then I mean, what's going to stop them from getting injured in the NFL?
Well, I was about to make the counter argument to the counter argument, which is
NIL.
that may have been an argument back before NIL came along,
Hmm.
when guys were just playing for a scholarship and free food in the the athletic dorm.
Yes.
But nowadays, guys are getting NIL money, and what are the real chances? I'm sure it would happen eventually, that if they expanded and they had to play an extra couple of games, it would happen. Somebody high profile would go down and rip up a knee or something. And but yeah, I mean, there's always that injury risk. And I don't know. It's what you said before about if there were 16 teams, then the 17th team is going to be upset. And it just so
Yeah.
happens this year, the Longhorns are going to be, for all intents and purposes, on the outside looking in. They're going to
Hmm.
be that 13th, 14th, 15th team, and so yeah. I mean, what are you supposed to do?
I think you probably need to hire some smarter people to deliberate, and I think you might have muted yourself on accident. Um, I think you need to hire some smarter people to do some equations that take into account the strength of schedule because it is a very real thing. Like you mentioned, Texas A&M having only played one top 10 opponent that was in the top 10 at the time they played them, and yet they're going to walk into the college football playoff while Texas has had, for all intents and purposes, a much more difficult schedule. Playing Ohio State, playing Georgia. I keep seeing this graphic that Texas A&M has been in the SEC for however many years, 13, 12, 13 years or whatever, and they've played Georgia once, and Texas has been in the SEC for less than 2 years, and they played Georgia three times in that time span. So that they cannot keep letting these teams get away with these cupcake schedules. Of course, yeah. Then you say, "Oh, you got to play who's in front of you." Okay, then put someone more talented in front of you. You have a level of weighing in and decision making with that. The best teams need to be able to prove that they can go against other good teams and win. They can't
Well,
just
and
get by on beating up nobodies.
it also gets into the whole conference championship game discussion because
Hmm.
like Georgia and Alabama are going to play in their conference championship game. That's one more game where guys could get hurt before the playoffs. Georgia for sure is in. Alabama is kind of on the bubble, but probably going to get in.
Hmm.
And it really kind of is a meaningless game other than to say, well, we won this game, therefore we won our conference. I saw somewhere that in the ACC, their conference championship, one of the teams that made the conference championship is Duke, that went
Hmm.
5-5 on the season,
Wow.
and now they're not going to get invited into the college football playoffs, even if they
Hmm.
win that game. But maybe the solution is to reward, I don't know, the top 8 teams based
Hmm.
upon uh whether they win their conference or whatever else, something. And then you have just the four that can be picked at random by I don't know, the sports writers, coaches, whoever it is that does it, that says, look, these teams didn't win the championship of their conference, but we recognize they're that they're stronger, that they can really compete. I mean, that's still
Sure.
the best argument Texas has, and
Yeah.
I don't
Because
have my
I,
hopes up.
Because I think, yeah, if you look, if you ask any notable figure in sports writing, coaches, just any notable person who pays attention to college football, they would tell you that Texas is a playoff caliber team for
Sure.
sure. I
Yeah.
think there are some teams that may get in over Texas that are not nearly as deserving. As for the conference championship matter, yeah, I think that it is fair if every conference champion gets an automatic bid. You win your conference, sure. And if you are the winner of the weakest conference and you yourself are not that strong, then you'll lose pretty quickly. And then that will be done anyway. Um,
Yeah. Well, uh, last year and the year before that, Texas made the playoffs. It wasn't a
Hmm.
question. We were not on the outside looking in. We were not a bubble team, and so I didn't think about the arguments as much, although I did acknowledge them. This year, it looks like Texas is going to be that bubble team that gets left out, so it hits a little different. And it's going to be the argument next year with whoever the bubble teams are then.
Yeah, yeah, it will be.
So yeah, I people smarter than us, I guess, will have to figure it out.
Hmm.
Maybe I know in the basketball NCAA basketball tournament, they introduced that play-in game. From of course they've got 64 teams, and
Hmm.
then the people were arguing, well, what about number 65 and 66? I mean, so they introduced the play-in games.
I
Um,
wouldn't hate the idea of a playing game for college
yeah,
football. Have like the 13th and 14th team go at it, or like maybe have the 13th and the 16th team go at it, and then the 14th and 15th, and then you have the winners of those two games get like the 13th and 14th seed. I
yeah,
kind of like the sound of that. Maybe
yeah. Maybe give a
kind of like
bye to the.
approve it. Yeah,
Sure. I mean, who knows? They'll figure something out. Want to
sure.
switch to a little happier topic for me.
Hmm.
Uh, I love the fact that of course, that the Longhorns beat the Aggies, but it may not mean much.
Yeah.
Um, Suddenly, now here we're into November, and you've heard me say this probably every day of your life that you've been watching sports. When it comes to the Cowboys, I just want to be relevant when it comes to. Oh, we got barking dogs here. I need to close the door. When it comes to the Cowboys,
Hmm.
I want the Cowboys to be relevant on Thanksgiving. Um, Sorry
Yeah.
about the dog
I
barking. I'm
have
trying.
heard you say that quite a lot.
Yeah. Um,
If you need to go on mute and I can kind of take the reins
yeah.
until
Let
it's
me
calmed
mute for
down, I
one
can.
second
Sure.
and see what I can do about the dogs. Hold on.
All right. While he's excuse me. While he's dealing with the dogs, I'll take the reins. Yeah, talking about the Cowboys, like you mentioned, it's very important that the Cowboys at least be relevant in terms of playoff contention, at least by Thanksgiving. That's, when we're getting to about two-thirds of the way, three-quarters of the way through the season, playoff picture is starting to come into view of what teams are going to make it, what teams aren't going to make it. I think it's really interesting that the Rams, who are they still the one seed, or was that like before this past weekend's games?
They were before, but then the Panthers beat them.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, at least very recently, the number one seed and the number seven seed all both had 9 wins
yeah,
or something like that. And so, at least in the NFC, it's an incredibly tight race. And, while a month ago or so, the Cowboys looked well and truly on a downward spiral to a, top seven or so pick in the draft, now we're seemingly on the rise and playoff aspirations are a real possibility. We just beat the Eagles and Chiefs, the last two Super Bowl participants, last two Super Bowl champions at that. And tomorrow night we have the Detroit Lions in Detroit. So
hmm
certainly not an easy game by any means. The Lions are still favored, despite the fact that the Lions lost on Thanksgiving last week to the Packers, who we tied to. So if you just look at the stats there as they appear on paper, it would look like this is a game that the Cowboys should win, especially given the Lions' recent struggles and the Cowboys' recent successes.
I heard Stephen A. Smith was saying on TV this morning that this game might be the deciding factor because the Cowboys and the Lions are kind of similarly situated record wise,
Hmm.
and that the winner of this game really, they always show you the numbers of chances of making the playoffs and all that, takes a big leap forward, and the loser of this game takes a big leap backwards. And Yeah, I'm surprised, uh, pleasantly surprised by this resurgence of the Cowboys here
Mhm.
as we've gone into midseason. Because early in the season it looked like it was going to be a disaster.
Oh yeah,
I mean, they're only a game and a half behind the Eagles, who are suddenly stumbling, and they're finding a little semblance of a defense at times. Of course, the offense is we know is fairly strong when they get the passing game going, and so yeah, I mean, I'm happy that the Cowboys are relevant at Thanksgiving.
oh
There've
yeah,
been plenty of years where we're watching the Thanksgiving Day game and we're going, it doesn't matter if they win or lose because they're not going to make the playoffs. So I'm
yeah.
just adds an extra level of joy to the holiday season for me that
Mm.
the games actually mean something. Um, Interesting. We've mentioned this several different podcasts about who the best team is and how weird it is this year. You mentioned the Rams. A week or two ago, I was saying, yeah, I think the Rams may be the most complete team, and then they go out and lose.
Yep.
And so and I think
How
I said
about
that
that?
about Buffalo one week, and then they
Yep.
went out
Said
and
that about the
lost.
Bills. Said that about the Seahawks. Said that about the Rams. What team do we want to curse next?
Yeah, that was my question. Who's
I think the
who's
Eagles look good.
Well, we always want the Eagles to lose, being Cowboy fans, but
Hmm.
um, it's just such a weird season that nobody's being consistent at all. And I mean, at one point, it looked like the Colts were going to be this
Hmm.
surprise team, and then the Colts
Now they're
suddenly
behind the
lose.
Jaguars. They're both 8-4.
Yeah, the Jaguars are up there now, and uh, it's just such a weird season. I think for the Cowboys, the best thing, of course, is to win the division, but they got 5 games
Hmm.
left and they're a game and a half behind, and they don't play Philly again. So we need Philly to keep losing and Dallas to keep winning. But for the
Of course.
Cowboys to get in as a wild card, I think I'm trying to remember who I saw that was in that position. The 49ers for sure were one of those teams that, well, they need to lose a bunch for the Cowboys to get in as a wild card, because
Yeah.
Cowboys are still sitting on that fifth 5 losses and one tie.
Yep.
And it just like in college football where you say, well, you lose that third game and you're probably out. In the pros, if you have 6 losses, you might get in, and if you have 7 losses, definitely if you have 7 losses plus a tie, it's
Yeah.
most likely not going to happen. And they've been sitting on 5 losses now for for a
Almost a
long
month.
time. Yeah, and so yeah, this Detroit game, if they can go 2 games above 500, kind of keep this streak going. I did
Oh yeah.
see for the Detroit game, they were saying Detroit's probably going to be without St. Brown, um,
Again.
the wide receiver again. Yeah,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
he's one of their spark plugs. So then that means whoever they've got in, and what Laporta, their tight end, is out, I think, for the season.
Wow.
So that means that the running game. I haven't heard David Montgomery's name hardly at all this year. It's all been Jameer Gibbs.
Hmm.
And the one thing that the Cowboys have been able to do, even when they were struggling on defense early in the season, is stop the run. When they were really struggling, it was against strong passing teams earlier in the season.
For sure. And then we talked about a few weeks ago when we acquired Quinnen Williams from the Jets, how we are questioning how much a defensive tackle would help with our pass rush struggles, and then suddenly he's kind of blown our minds, and he's been helping out a lot, even from the interior of the defensive line. So,
Yeah, I don't remember seeing a defensive lineman, defensive tackle get that kind of a push right in the quarterback's face. No,
mhm,
nobody comes to mind. I know back when he played for the Rams. We always heard about Aaron Donald being this
mm,
generational defensive tackle, and maybe I just didn't see enough games. But when he was on TV and I would actually watch him, I didn't see the push that I'm seeing out of Quinnen Williams. And I'm not trying to disparage Aaron Donald. People,
Hmm.
if they're saying that good things about him, it was for a reason. But I just didn't see enough of it. But Quinnen Williams has just been a beast, and the Cowboys getting DeMarvion Overshown back is enormous.
Oh yeah,
Um, because now they've got a guy who can go sideline to sideline with speed.
for
And
sure.
so anyway, um,
I think the Cowboys going kind of from zero to hero and rising from the ashes to make possibly make the playoffs is maybe the cherry on top of this just very weird football season.
it's been really really weird, but
In what world are the Patriots 11-2 and the Bills are only 8-4? In what world are the Broncos, who are 10-2, being called extremely fraudulent, and the Chiefs are 6-6?
yeah, the Broncos and Patriots. I wasn't even thinking about them. We were talking about the teams
Hmm.
that you look and you go, well, maybe they're the best team.
Broncos are not the best team, not even
Yeah,
close.
yeah,
No.
and I haven't seen enough of the Patriots to know. All I see is their record, and obviously Drake May
Hmm.
is playing well. So I don't know. Interesting season, and it may get to one of those things though that we all know this. There are teams every year that look like they're going to be really good, and then they get to the playoffs and they don't know how to win in the playoffs. So some of these
Yeah.
some of these teams that have never been there before, it's just a whole different game. So
I think
gonna
a prime example of what you just said is probably going to be the Chicago Bears. They are somehow 9-3. I have no idea how. They they have. Let me just click on them. I think I want to, before I say this, get this correct. I want to say that they've won their past several. Okay, so yeah, they beat the Eagles by 9 on Friday. So that's obviously very good, helping us out. But then they beat the Steelers by 3. They beat the Vikings by 2. They beat the Giants by 4. They beat Cincinnati on that very fluky deep touchdown at the very end of the game. They beat them 47-42. They lose to the Ravens, the only really legitimate team other than the Eagles that they've played in that stretch. They've won a lot of close games against not very great teams. They beat the Raiders and then Washington 25-24 in back to back. Well, okay, there's a bye week in between, but back to back games. Their biggest victory, ironically, has been against the Cowboys. And I think that's easily maybe the worst that the Cowboys have looked all year, maybe except for the Panthers game.
yeah, I agree with that. It's
So,
going to be interesting coming down the stretch, man. There's just no predicting this season the
mhm.
way that sometimes in the past it's been fairly predictable, and maybe that's a good thing because it
Oh
increases
yeah,
fan interest. So the NFL probably is pretty happy about the parity that they're seeing on a week to week
for
basis.
sure.
Anybody can win, anybody can lose. So
Hmm.
um, speaking of
I
coming down to the end of the season, um, I know that your uh, racing
Yep.
season is coming down
Yep.
to a climactic finish there for F1,
Hmm.
and so I know you'll be watching carefully for people who do not know what's at stake and where we are and all of that. Give us an update.
Okay. First, before I get into that, I just had this thought that I feel like would you say going into this NFL season, people were concerned that it might be a boring season with the Eagles being dominant, the Chiefs still being good, kind of the same teams still being good, and it
A
being
little
kind of
bit,
boring. Yeah, and then suddenly it's turned into a very entertaining, very unpredictable season that's kind of been turned on its head multiple times.
yeah. Oh,
Well,
definitely.
there are some parallels to this F1 season where, of course, coming into the year, everyone kind of figured McLaren would still be really good because of how they finished out the second two-thirds of the final two-thirds of 2024. Everyone kind of knew McLaren would be really good. and they have been, of course. And for a lot of this season, it looked like it would be very boring. Like McLaren would essentially micromanage and papaya rules their way all the way through this championship, and it would just be the most boring championship fight of all time until Max Verstappen started clawing and just gnashing his way back through this 104-point championship deficit to now being 12 points behind Lando Norris in the lead of the championship and 4 points ahead of Oscar Piastri, who's now in third after
Hmm.
Qatar. Going into Abu Dhabi, the it is turned from one of the most boring, most uninteresting seasons of all time to now one of the most nail biting. Oh my God, is he really going to pull this off? Things to have ever happened, not only in Formula One, not only in racing, but in any sport ever.
Hmm.
That I would go on record. I mean, of course, I'll put it in football terms. Um, this would be like if instead of it being 28-3 in Super Bowl 51, it would be like if it was 50-3
Hmm.
and the
Wow.
Patriots still came back and won
Yeah.
because the Falcons threw like five pick sixes. You
Wow.
know, like that. I feel like that's kind of the magnitude of this comeback.
Yeah.
And there are so
Can you?
many different, huh?
I was just going to say, can you tell us? You said Max is 12 points behind with one race to go,
Yes,
and tell us again the scoring system. Like if Max
yes.
wins and the other guy finishes second, is
hmm
that going to get him
I,
the
I
12
was
points? Yeah.
I was about to get into all the, I guess, championship permutations that well, basically Lando, Max, and Oscar are the only drivers that can mathematically win the championship. Fourth place is George Russell on 309 points. He's 81. He's 83 points behind Oscar Piastri. He's not winning the championship. It's going to be Lando, Max, or Oscar. Lando controls his own destiny. If Lando gets first, second, or third, he will score at a minimum 15 points, which is what you get for finishing third,
Okay.
um, which is more, which would then put his gap to Max at more than the 25 points that you get for a victory. So even if Max wins, if Lando gets third, he will still be the world champion. It doesn't matter what else happens. But if Lando gets fourth in the race, then if Max wins, he will win. He will be the champion by 1 point because you get 25 points for winning a race. You get 12 points for fourth place. So Max would gain 13 points on Lando, and it's a 12-point gap. So Max would win by 1 point.
Okay.
Oscar, I believe, Oscar Piastri needs to. I think he needs to win the race, have Max be, I want to say third. I think, no, I think it's second or lower. And I think Lando needs to be like sixth or eighth or so. Oscar
Yeah.
has by far the hardest job, which is incredibly ironic because Oscar has been the one who has looked the strongest. If you look at the entire season, he's the one that was leading the championship for the majority of the year. And
Yeah.
so now for him to be truly up against the wall, it's very interesting to see that dynamic. Um, I wanted to get your take on this because I have my own opinions of it. So, of course, for anyone who knows what's been going on with McLaren this year and all this papaya rules nonsense, basically McLaren trying to micromanage this championship to the fullest capacity that they can and like making things as fair for their drivers as possible. At
Hmm.
least that's how they present it, many skeptics, including myself, believe that they are very much favoring Lando, and they use this papaya rules stuff to essentially make Oscar give way to Lando. But anyway, there's a hypothetical scenario going around that I want to get your thoughts on, where Max is in first towards the end of the race. Let's say someone else, it doesn't matter, literally anybody else is in second, and then Oscar is in third, and then Lando is in fourth.
Sure.
What first of all, what do you do if you're McLaren? Because if that was the finishing order, Max would be the champion.
Right.
Oscar cannot be champion if Max finishes ahead of him. It just can't happen because he's behind Max.
Sure.
So if you're McLaren, do you tell Oscar to give way to Lando, let Lando finish third ahead of you, and therefore claim the championship? Just so
Um,
one of your drivers can win the championship. And if you're Oscar Piastri, what do you say to that?
I think that, well, I mean, team dynamics in this are different than the team
Hmm.
dynamics that come in football and that type of
Very
thing.
much, because that, yeah.
I think if you're running that team, you absolutely tell the driver to stand down so that one of
Hmm.
his teammates can win because it increases your brand. And if it increases your brand, even if you are the guy that is being asked to kind of, hey, slow down and let this guy pass you,
Hmm.
the more successful your team is, the better it is for you. I mean, if you don't have a chance to win the championship individually
Hmm.
yourself, then clearly that would be, you know, uh, it's good if you win it as a member of a team, and that's
For
got to
sure.
be kind of hard. But we see it all the time in
Hmm.
team sports, um, where you want individual success. Yes, you also want team success, and we've seen it. I'll just go on the comparison to wide receiver. I mean,
Hmm.
it's final play of the game in the Super Bowl. You're the stud wide receiver, and you're going to draw the double team, and the
Hmm.
coach says don't throw it into the double team, throw it to the second best wide receiver on the team who's getting single coverage. Are you mad? I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
well, are you
that's a fair
just in it for
comparison.
yourself, or are you in it for the team?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good comparison. That's pretty much the excuse that McLaren would make. Um, my only hang up, and I think a lot of fans hang up with that, is the amount of times earlier in the year where McLaren have essentially ordered Oscar to stand down in
Yeah.
favor of Lando. Like, let's say Lando. This is a really good example in Italy. Lando had a slow pit stop. He made his pit stop um basically before the pit stops were made. Lando was ahead of Oscar. They were like second and third or whatever. Um, and then they both made their pit stops, and Lando, because he had a slow stop, lost his second place to Oscar. And so McLaren ordered Oscar, hey, let Lando by. He had a slow stop. That's, in the name of fairness. But many fans, including myself, say, wait, no, hold on. Pit stops are a part of racing. If you have a slow stop, sure, that's unfortunate. It's not really your fault, but you still kind of have to deal with it. I mean, if it was a driver, if instead of Oscar Piastri it was George Russell of a completely different team, what are you going to get on the phone with Mercedes and say, hey, tell George to stand down because Lando had a slow stop? Like that's just ridiculous. And so
Sure.
I think, sure, there is the team dynamic, but at the end of the day, Formula One, the way I kind of think of it is it's an individual team sport. Like, sure, you're a part of a team and you have a teammate, but if anything, the one person you want to beat is your teammate. Because not all Formula One cars are equal, and so the best way, the truest way to say, oh, one driver is better than another, is to put them in the same car, which means them being on the same team. So In a way, sure, they're your
Well,
teammate. They're kind of seen as like,
I
oh, your
think,
best friend, but they're also your greatest competitor.
but there's a reason for it. In the scenario you were talking about, it's trying to win a team championship. If
Hmm.
neither one of them had the championship on the line,
Hmm.
or even if both of them did, um, and the leaders of the team went and said, "Well, look, we want to promote this guy over you. Maybe he's younger or more popular or whatever the reason
Hmm.
may be. So
Hmm.
we want you to stand down." Then I think that the other driver could object to that. But
Oh,
in a
Oscar
situation that
certainly
you,
has.
yeah, and in a situation though that you were talking about, if Max is in first place
Hmm.
and there's no way for the other guy to claim the championship,
Hmm.
then yeah, I mean, you have to have those conversations, and
Hmm.
I can I can
Yeah.
tell you I can tell you, if I'm that guy and they're asking me to stand down,
Hmm.
um, I'm going to do some deep soul searching, and I'm going to think, well, do I want to be a part of this team in the future? If
Yeah.
so, here's my chance to show ultimate loyalty. And
Hmm.
if these people behind the scenes have been treating me poorly, and I really don't care what they think, and I don't even like them, then maybe maybe I would say, yeah, thanks for asking, but I'm not slowing
Hmm.
down for anybody. But you've got to
Sure.
understand, there's going to be fallout if you do that. And
Sure. Not only with the
not
team.
knowing any of these people, there's no way I
Hmm.
could tell you what I would do.
Sure. It does also add an extra layer of depth that this whole time throughout Oscar Piastri's young career. See, you mentioned like, oh, maybe they're favoring the one guy because he's younger, more popular. Oscar is the younger one of the two. Lando is still pretty young, but Oscar is certainly the younger of the two. Um, and so he's always been playing second fiddle. They say like in a team you have a number one driver and a number two driver, kind of just the one that's seen as like the better of the two. And it's really interesting because
Sure.
Oscar Piastri, who is well known to be Australian, is actually managed by a fellow former Formula One driver from Australia, Mark Webber, who was a Red Bull driver. Um, for a long time in his career. Actually, towards the end of his career, when Red Bull was getting good, was a championship contender for the last few years of his career until he retired after the 2013 season. Um, but he notably had to play second fiddle, oftentimes to Sebastian Vettel, four-time champion. And so it's just really interesting how Oscar, an Australian Formula One driver, kind of being asked to play second driver and wingman to somebody else, is being managed by a former Australian Formula One driver who had to play number two to somebody in his career. I think that's a really interesting parallel. But yeah, I agree that it would be the wise thing to do because not only if Oscar were to say no, I'm not gonna let Lando go, because of the way y'all have treated me. That is effective career suicide, in my opinion, not just
It
within
is.
his standing with the McLaren team, but you're essentially broadcasting whether this is true or not. The other teams will see this as, oh, Oscar Piastri, you're not a team player. I don't want you on my team.
Right.
Because you're going to be selfish. And so I'm not saying Oscar Piastri is selfish. I believe that if I were in his shoes, I'd be incredibly angry with my team for feeling like they don't have my back. And so I believe Oscar Piastri morally is completely in the right to hold his ground and prevent his teammate from winning this championship, even if it means that the rival will end up winning it. I think morally he's in the right, but logically it probably would not be the wisest thing for him to do.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. Uh,
Hmm.
it certainly creates a dilemma. and to me the personalities and the history between those personalities would
Hmm.
just play such a big role,
Sure.
and we never know what goes on behind the cameras. So
True.
I don't know
That
if
is
if
very
it
true.
plays out that way. I definitely want you to come back on and tell us uh,
Well,
how
yeah.
it
Next
how it
week.
played
Next
out.
week. Yeah.
um,
Next week, we're gonna probably spend 5 minutes on the inside the helmet, another 5 minutes on the Cowboys, and then 45 minutes of this. Um, no, probably not. Also, I
no,
realized
I'm sure you'll have
my
plenty to say about that.
I will. I realized my golden polo shirt. This is gold, by the way. Um, it looks a little bit like orange. So no, I'm not
Hmm.
betraying Max. I still believe Max will win. Lando will get like fifth or whatever. And I'll be a very happy man next week. Um, one more F1
Okay.
topic because, huh? What did you say?
No, I didn't say anything.
Okay, I
I
thought you
didn't.
did. Okay. Um, one more F1 topic because it is pretty recent news. If you follow F1, then you probably are aware that being Max Verstappen's teammate is not an easy task. During his entire career in F1, he has essentially laid waste to everybody unfortunate enough to find themselves in that second Red Bull car. Um, some even say that Daniel Ricciardo uh, unintentionally cursed that second Red Bull seat. But it's all jokes. Anyway, Yuki Tsunoda, the Japanese Formula One driver, has been in the Red Bull family his entire career. Was with the Red Bull like B team because they Red Bull owns two F1 teams. They have like the main team and then the second team. Yuki was in the second team for his whole career from 2021 up until two races in to this year, 2025. And then after Liam Lawson was not proving to be that exciting in the Red Bull seat, they swapped him and Yuki went up to Red Bull, and Liam Lawson went back down to the Racing Bulls, the B team, essentially. And now, after a pretty disappointing season from Yuki, it has now come out yesterday, I believe, that Yuki will be demoted to Red Bull's test and reserve driver. Isaac Hadjar,
Hmm.
current rookie and Racing Bulls driver, will be promoted up to the main Red Bull team. Liam Lawson is staying right where he is. And Arvin Lindblad, a current Formula 2 driver, will be in the second Racing Bulls seat as a rookie next year. And I feel really bad for Yuki because I don't think he's a terrible driver. I think that second Red Bull is incredibly difficult to drive, especially right now because we've had multiple years under these current car regulations. And so there have been multiple years for Red Bull to, upgrade and fine tune the car to be as fast as it can be. And of course, Max is their golden goose. They're going to listen to him over anybody else when it comes to feedback and like how Max wants the car. That's generally going to be the direction they take it, of course, because he's their most successful, he's their highest ceiling driver, of course. And Max is very well known to
Sure.
have a specific preference when it comes to his car, where he likes a very sharp front end, which means that it's very twitchy. It's very unstable if you're not able to control it, but of course he can. But Yuki and any of his teammates have trouble with it, and so the faster and faster Max goes, and the faster, the more sharp the car gets, which he can handle, his teammates can't. And so the gap between Max and his
Yep.
teammates just gets wider and wider. And so I feel for Yuki because I think that he was kind of set up to lose here. I think that he would have honestly done better this year had he stayed in the Racing Bulls rather than moving up to Red Bull. I just think he was essentially sent to slaughter. But I, I do think it's a good opportunity. Isaac Hadjar has proven to be a very good driver just in his rookie year. And so I do like this opportunity for him, especially with the new regulations. I feel like the gap won't be quite as wide early on, in terms of like the car being specifically made for Max. And so I think Isaac will have a better shot at finding success pretty early on. But I don't necessarily agree with Yuki being the one who is kind of left out to dry, and Liam Lawson, who I don't think is nearly as good as Yuki Tsunoda, still having a full time F1 seat.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have any thoughts on that, or
Well, I don't know the drivers. I'm learning from you as we
fair?
go.
Fair enough. That's why I keep telling you you should watch F1, but I guess after a week I won't really be able to tell you that for a few months. Um,
True.
yeah, but
Very
you
true.
really should. Um,
Okay.
do we have anything else we want to talk about before we close things out?
Well, we went over our estimated time again,
Yeah, well,
but that's okay.
we always do. I think we just need to
We
change our
always do.
estimated time.
Maybe so.
Uh, all right, be really quick. I just want to hear. We're going to do a tiny little prediction segment to end things off. Given how unpredictable this NFL season has been, and how our predictions have changed so many times, we're going to give you some more predictions. So I just want to hear one team that you are surprised by, like one, I guess, is less predictions and more just kind of stating an opinion but not really going too deep on it. A team that you're surprised by, it can either be surprised they're doing really well or surprised they're doing really bad. And then a team that you think will stay consistently doing well.
Well, the Chiefs are the easy surprise. We haven't
Okay.
seen any season where Patrick Mahomes didn't make the AFC Championship game, and now
Hmm.
they may not. I think they have to run the table to make the playoffs. So they're the
I think they
biggest
do.
surprise on the side. And as
Hmm.
far as the one team I think has been the most consistent, there's not one.
I mean,
And
like
that in
not that has
itself
been the
is
most consistent, but like who do you think that maybe is doing well right now? Who do you think has the best chance to keep doing well?
they were saying on the sports talk this morning that the Cowboys are the scariest team in the NFL right now.
Really, I'm
And
very
yeah,
happy to hear that.
yeah, and because they suddenly have found a little bit of a defense to go with that offense, but right
Hmm.
now they're on the outside looking in on the playoffs. So,
Yeah,
um, so aside from saying the Cowboys, I still think that the best team I've seen has been the Rams. I know they lost to the Panthers this past weekend,
everyone's gonna lose to the
but
Panthers this year, apparently.
well, I guess. Uh, and that I think it's based more upon Matthew Stafford. He's been there.
Yeah,
He's won a Super Bowl. He's still got the skills. He's 37 years old, and I don't know. I mean, their coach is still an innovative coach.
he's also
I
37
still,
years old. It feels like.
yeah. So I guess I would
Not
say the
quite.
Rams.
Okay. Um, For my surprise, I already kind of talked about them earlier. Surprise, fraud, whatever word you want to use. I think they both applied to the Chicago Bears. They've won a lot of very close games. Despite being 9-3, they have a +6 point differential. So they're not winning by a whole lot. Of course, they have a big loss to the Lions in there as well, kind of dragging that down against them. But very surprised at the Bears. And since you already talked about the Cowboys, I think they're a really good shout to stay doing very well. One team that's kind of been on the rise, and they kind of fit into the surprise and I think they're going to continue doing well, the Houston Texans. I wanted to
Yeah,
kind of bring a little bit of attention to them because we had Jay on last episode, and so I wanted to
Sure.
shout out the Texans and shout out Jay because we talked about the Texans and they ended up beating the Colts this past weekend. So good for them for doing that, and
Yep.
they're looking really well after looking very bad at the beginning of the year. They've really turned it around, very
Good.
similar to how the Cowboys have. So I would say look out for the Texans to kind of make a late run and sneak into the playoffs, especially with how unstable the
Yeah.
AFC
Good
South
call.
is. They could win the division. Who knows? I mean, they're only
Never
a
know.
game back. The Jags and Colts are both 8-4. The Texans are 7-5. They have a real shot.
Sure.
Um, yeah,
Sure.
yeah. But I guess that's probably about all the time we have. You think?
Okay.
All right. Well, uh, thank you guys for joining us. Come back next week to hear. If you don't follow it yourself, come back next week to hear how the Cowboys did. Any updates on the Longhorns? Maybe making the playoffs, maybe not making the playoffs, and come back for the parade after Max Verstappen wins the championship
Yeah.
this
All
weekend.
right.
So, all right, we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. God bless.
Mhm. Okay, I've hit stop recording. It's still recording, even though I hit stop. I'm not sure what's going on with it. Huh, mine still is counting the recording going. Hmm, indeed. Last 10 what? Really? Hmm, that's not good. Maybe. I'm not sure. Alright. Alright. See ya. Yep. Yes, I want to stop the recording, please. My phone is like overheating or something? Like, is that what's going on?